All right, so the preamble, we just talked about it's the introduction. And within the preamble, it indicates the goals of the Constitution. And a lot of it we already kind of discussed already when we're mentioning about the Articles of Confederation and how this was a weak central government and trying to look to maybe enhance that with a revision and just a creation of a new form of government with the Constitution. So here's the preamble. I want you guys to memorize it. Oh, Sarah's now you don't have to memorize, but I think it is important that you should know this, right? You should know this, right? But the main gist of it, I do want you to know, is the 6 goals, right? The preamble is the introduction of the Constitution. And for the 6 goals, this is something that I think it's important that you know. It's trying to really state forward what this document's all about, right? You guys already did an assignment about the articles of the Constitution, which how many articles are there of the Constitution? Someone say, cancel what you said. I think you said it. 7, good job. There's 7 articles, right? And it really talks about the branches of the government, and then it details a little bit more about what that is held for powers-wise when it comes to federalism. And then we are going to talk about the amendments, so you will need to know the amendments. And how many amendments are there?
27.
27, yes, good job, good job. So throughout our nation's history, we've had 27 amendments. And you can look at a few of them and say, you know what, that kind of pertains to today. And then others, maybe not so much. And obviously with the 18th Amendment, okay, obviously being overturned with the 21st, you can look at that and say, okay, well, maybe that's one of them that should be kind of out of it. But in any case, our country's gone through this working progress. And that's what this document's supposed to be. It's a working document that's supposed to fit the needs of the people to continue America and its government. All right, so the 6 goals here, like I mentioned, with the structure, you guys already had an assignment on this, so I'm not going to focus on this too much. With the preamble, it defines the goals of the Constitution. I remember when I was in high school, I had to remember the preamble. I'm not going to make you guys do that, but just make sure you know the 6 goals, right? That's the main thing. Make sure you guys know the goals here. The articles, we just talked about the articles, there's 7 of them. It details about the branches of the government, which we know a little bit about already with the separation of powers and checks and balances assignment that I just had for you guys. And with that, it continues on detailing about the powers, which powers are held, let's say at the national level, what's is reserved for the states, and understanding more about federalism. Okay, and then the amendments. We just talked about the amendments. Okay, the first 10 known as Bill of Rights. Good work. Good job. All right, goal number 1. So to form a more perfect union. So note that it says more perfect union. Okay? Obviously, when it comes to thinking of a government that's perfect, it's impossible to have, right? We all know that there's critiques about our government, even still today. But for the most part, a more perfect union, it's understanding that we can try to create a government that's for the people, right? So the Articles of Confederation, we indicated that there's a lot of weaknesses to it. What were the weaknesses again? Oh, 6 of them, right? No taxation power, no judicial, no executive. What else? No national support. Okay. No standard currency. Good. What else? Interstate commerce. Yep. Good job. And the veto powers. Okay. So I kind of helped you through those, right, Mace? Okay. All right. Anyway, so with the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation, it was a goal to, number 1, try to provide a government that's suited for the people, one that is in a way more perfect than the governments that were established beforehand. We all know that America is breaking away from England because it was a tyrannical government, one of absolute power. I do have these presentations linked to the page in modules. You can find that in Canvas under module 3. Okay, so if I'm moving too fast, right, I just want to make sure that you can find that presentation and get back to it then. So I can show you then afterwards, but in any case, I want to get through this, but for the number 1 goal here, the first goal that we just talked about, it is to create a more perfect union. And you can find that where? The introduction. What is the introduction of the Constitution?
Preamble.
The preamble. Yeah, you can find it on YouTube too. Yeah, my YouTube channel. Like and subscribe, right, Kenson? Yeah. All right. Goal number 2 here. Establish justice, right? So again, one of the biggest issues with the Articles of Confederation is that there was no judicial branch. There's no way to solve the issues, disputes of the states, and even civil disputes at this matter. Right? The states had their own understanding when it came to the judicial branch. There was no common means of the, let's say, Supreme Court or judicial branch in the United States. So overall, they needed a federal court system. They needed something to oversee the states. And when it came to disputes amongst the states, if the states were solving between each other, that means they're kind of focused all as their own nation. So they needed some sort of uniformity. They needed to have somewhat of an established judicial system to solve the issues amongst the states. Again, with no standard currency and with interstate commerce controlled by the states, that's going to cause a lot of issues when it comes to economic needs. So there needs to be some sort of system or some sort of set of laws that were above the states. Okay, so a national court system, a judicial branch. And what is one of the principles of the Constitution? What was the last principle we talked about? At the very bottom, we mentioned about it. I had to add it on there. I almost forgot about it. Principles of the Constitution. We went over this on Thursday and Wednesday. Remember limited government, popular sovereignty. Yeah, checks and balances, separation of powers, judicial review. Yes, good job. Sarah, you didn't do it this time. Oh, man. Okay. So again, goal number 2 is to establish justice, right? Again, the articles left that out. You need to have some sort of judicial system linking and uniforming the states together. All right, goal number 3, domestic tranquility. Again, providing for the people here, making sure it's safe, providing, let's say, a state police system, making sure that there's no rebellions that are taking down the United States from the inside out, right? So we already mentioned about a few rebellions. What was one of the rebellions we mentioned about taxes? Was it Massachusetts? Who? Asa? Shays Rebellion. Yep, good job. So to make sure that these rebellions just don't continue on, we need to provide for the safety of our people internally, right? And how do you do that? How do you establish a police system? How do you establish order? What were you saying? Yeah, exactly, right? We need to have some sort of tax system. Again, what was one of the weaknesses with the articles? No taxation. So how can you provide safety for the people? You really can't. So that's something to understand. All right, so the national government, again, to try to prevent these rebellions from occurring, like Shays Rebellion, like the Whiskey Rebellion, you need to have some sort of system in place to protect the people. So goal number 3, domestic tranquility, protecting United States citizens. And this is applied throughout the nation's history. Even today, you can think about many protests, many violent protests in many cases that occur day in and day out over different means. But in any case, we need to have some sort of protection for the people, so apply it for the people. And that's one of the big hot topics in today's elections is this really funding for police. Okay, here for a while, defund the police was very popular. Now, as midterms are coming closer and closer, it seems like both sides, okay, are focused more on increasing the funding for police authorities. And the reason for it is because crime levels are just increasing every day all throughout these cities across the country. And not just one in particular, but many places. All right, so that's goal number 3. Goal number 4. So as we need to protect ourselves internally, we also need to protect from external threats. Okay, we need to focus on a national defense system. We need to try to protect ourselves from foreign invaders, foreign countries. So for another goal of the United States, the founding fathers, we need to try to provide safety. One of the biggest issues as a starting country, as a country that's just originating here, especially in the Western Hemisphere, we need to protect ourselves from Great Britain. And that was the strongest power of the time. We also need to protect ourselves from Spain. Spain is right there, a lot of their possessions within, let's say, Central America, South America. Okay, who knows? Maybe they'll try to reach up north and try to capture a lot of these lands that they once controlled. And they still controlled some lands at this time in Southwest United States. So protecting ourselves from outside forces. Also, Native American attacks at this time was huge, right? So we need to protect our people from these Native American attacks as we're maybe even expanding our land outward. Yep, we're taking their land from them. But this time we need to try to provide a national defense. Today, right, one of the biggest things is trying to provide a military that's protective of our values, democracy, obviously not only in the Western Hemisphere, not only within our country, but worldwide. So our military has expanded quite a bit since the founding fathers and since we created our government. But in any case, when it comes to providing democracy and providing for people, opportunities for people in government, that's essential. All right, so number 4, providing a common defense. Also, another topic of debate, especially with these midterm elections, is our southern border, right? So try to protect our border from illegal immigrants. That is really extenuating a lot of our systems when it comes to education, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to a lot of the funding to certain states, right? It's causing a ripple effect within the infrastructure of the U.S. when you're obviously pushing a lot more people into locations that are just not capable of suiting this population and this such a surge of population in a short time, especially like I mentioned with illegal immigration. So providing a common defense. All right, goal number 5 here. Promote the general welfare. So we already talked about through the purposes of government, public services. One of the biggest things that the country, the government can apply for the people is these institutions, these systems, these public services for the people. So with public services, we know with education, with infrastructure, roads and bridges, when it comes to healthcare, right? There's many services that are provided for the people by the government. So goal number 5 is to promote the general welfare. Try to provide for the people, the services, institutions, the systems needed for society, for communities. One thing too, like I mentioned, when it comes to licensing. So the states obviously need to know who's out in the road. Are they certified to be out in the road? Who has the ability to serve people when it comes to restaurants, when it comes to food, or I don't know, bars, liquor, right? So anyway, with certifications, with licensing, it's important that the state controls that. You just can't have some random person just selling booze to people. Like, obviously, that's not good. They need to go through some sort of regulation by the government to protect the people, that the food, the drinks that are prepared aren't just going to make people sick or might cause people to die. So overall, this is providing safety, providing protection for the people. And again, over time, this has really progressed. Through the 1900s, the progressive era, there's a lot of movement when it came to the government to protect the people through workplace issues, when it comes to providing, more of a benefits to people, okay, safety precautions in the workplace, regulating work hours, making sure that there's a wage that's common for the people to live, a minimum wage, even though today we can maybe say that this minimum wage is really small. We need to try to grow that over time. When it comes to Social Security, right, many other welfare programs that provide assistance for the people. Obviously, Food and Drug Administration is a big one as well. All right, and finally, number 6, secure the blessings of liberty. So when it comes to the people, we already talked about popular sovereignty. We talked about limited government. The people have a say in what the government should look like and how it should act. So when it comes to certain situations, maybe the government needs to pick up a little bit and try to be a little bit more influential in the people's lives. Let's say through a recession, a depression, pandemic, a war, who knows? And when it comes to, let's say, these government officials, maybe they're not reaching the expectations that the people want. They can impeach these members by obviously voting and having representatives that meet the values of the people. So obviously with democracy, it's important that the people have a say in the government, that the people decide what the government should look like. And we all know through elections that is possible. So again, to make sure that there is no tyrannical leader, make sure that there's no authoritative figure that approaches and becomes too strong and might actually take the voice of people. All right, is there any questions here on the goals of the preamble? So make sure, again, you guys remember the preamble is the introduction, starts off with we the people, and it labels the goals that this Constitution is intended to obviously establish and provide for the people. Okay, so that is the preamble, the 6 goals. Make sure you guys remember. here is your bell ringer for today. Listen and describe the 7 articles of the Constitution. There you go. There you go. So with that assignment that you had on Friday, which I'll grade here shortly, probably after you guys leave here, I wanted you to label and describe 7 articles of the Constitution. Yeah, go ahead. Do you finish up the bell ringer? What's up? All right, yeah, go ahead. Just sign out. What's going on with it? Uh, you okay? Yeah. All right. All right, guys. So the articles of the Constitution. Before we get there, though, we just talked about the introduction of the Constitution. What is another name for that? The preamble. Yep, good job. So the preamble, it indicates the 6 goals of the Constitution. One thing to note, the Constitution is, I would think, probably the most important piece of paper ever written. Yeah, you might argue, say, the Declaration of Independence. Yeah, it's up there. But with the Constitution, this is literally setting out the voice of democracy, the paper that indicates what powers are given to the people, what rights are given to the people, and indicating that this government is set out for the people, by the people. And again, it was something never seen before by the world. And it's all these Enlightenment views that we just talked about with the Enlightenment thinkers being applied to this government system. So when you think of the Constitution, again, it's one of those most probably one of the most important pieces of paper ever made. We mentioned about the Magna Carta. We mentioned about some of these other influences that were so um, impactful to the creation of our government. And the Constitution is an embodiment of all those influences into one. And it's again something to be proudful and very proud and prideful over as an American. It's again one of those probably the most important piece of paper, one of the most important documents ever written. So the articles of the Constitution, what do we have? What's Article 1? What is that detail about? What is Article 1 about? What branch? Legislative branch. Good job. And we already talked about Congress already, how it got its roots. A lot of the debates with the Federalists, the Anti-Federalists over the Virginia plan, the New Jersey plan, and how representation should be discussed, right? And we talked about how this led to a bicameral system where the House of Representatives will be based off of population, and the Senate is going to be based off of equal representation. Okay, so legislative branch. And again, if you had to think about a most dominant branch, okay, again, you don't want to think of that when you're talking about the branches of the government, but the legislative branch was designed to have the most power. Okay, and you can kind of see that when we worked on that separation of powers, the checks and balances activity. The legislative branch had more power to, let's say, impeach a president or impeach Supreme Court justices. And they have the power to create laws and policy, right? So that's important to know. So legislative branch was that first article. What about the second article? What's that, Kenson? Executive, good job. So we know the president, right? And again, the Articles of Confederation, it didn't include an executive branch. So it's important to have someone to enforce the laws. It's important to have someone that can relate and have discussions with foreign countries. And obviously, through America's history, it's indicated that through time, right, we will have to interact with other countries. George Washington stated that presidents of the United States should not interact with other countries because we'll get involved in wars outside of our own borders, right? We'll get in wars outside over the oceans that is going to be costly to many Americans. But as the world grows closer together through these advancements of technology, it's almost impossible to seclude yourself that long and to isolate yourself that long. And by World War I and World War II, we see the United States interact a lot more with these countries over the oceans. And it's important to note with the executive branch, again, that's enforcing laws. We know that with the president. All right, Article 3. Well, they have one more branch. Asa. Judicial branch. Good job. So we already mentioned about the principles of the Constitution. The last one was judicial review. Okay, we talked about how these goals established by the preamble, by the founding fathers, it's established that we need to have a judicial system to interpret the laws, to deem laws constitutional or not, or even actions by these representatives, okay, or these political figures as constitutional. All right, good. So judicial review, definitely important. All right, Article 4. Article 4. So now we're away from the branches of government. What's Article 4 about? There's another issue of the Articles of Confederation when it came to interstate commerce. So what is this one all about? Article 4. Mace?
State relations.
Yeah, good job. So relations among the states. So again, when it comes to these states, they're acting as their own countries under the Articles of Confederation. It's important that there is a uniform body that stands over the states, and that is this national government, the federal government. Okay, good. And with the Constitution, that is bringing these states together. That's indicating how these states should relate with one another. All right, so what about the 5th article? What's Article 5 all about? We have 27 of them. Bray. Yeah, good job. So amending the Constitution. So through time, we all know that our government's going to go through changes. We know our country is going to go through changes. It's important that the Constitution was designed to be a working document. Okay. And like I mentioned with Thomas Jefferson, he said that these laws, these amendments should only have a 19-year span. And the reason for that is because our country is going to change. Our values might change through time. Okay, but we all know the Constitution that stands firm. But again, amending it and having laws and amendments established for the time period is important to have. So the amendment process. All right, Article 6. What's Article 6 about? Georgia? Okay, good. What else? Oaths, okay. What else? Yep, good job. So this is indicating that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. That when we're going to talk about next chapter with federalism, if there's any arguments between a state, let's say state to state, or even a national government in states, they're going to refer back to the Constitution to see what is appropriate. So this is showing that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And no matter what, if there is anything that is going against the Constitution, it is going to be shot down. All right. And that's indicating that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Right. And yeah, there's other portions to that. But in any case, Article 7, last one here. Tony, what do you have? Ratification. Yep, good job. And what does ratification mean? It's a ratification of the Constitution. What does that mean? Tony, you got it? No? Someone? What does ratification mean? I think this is one of your terms. Last chapter. No? Oh, come on now. Ratification. Approval. It means approval. So this is a ratification of the Constitution or approval of the Constitution. My oh my. What state was the first state to ratify the Constitution? What was it? Oh, we know this one. Bray. Delaware. Okay, good. Second? Oh yeah, good job, PA. Good work. All right, guys. Now there you go. There you go. We're gonna finish up with that. Again, make sure you guys